What is this, man? I shave my beard off and you grow it? Like, what's going on here?
Tell you what, man. I'm trying to explain this hair and this beard. They don't belong to me, man. And any facial hair is just a tool for one of my kids to grab me. When I'm looking the other, like they're at school now. Otherwise, they would all be in here trying to get me from behind. And that's what I like about the Zoom is I get to see them coming. You know what I mean? 'Cause it's full on war here, and it's a problem, Larry. Honestly, because my wife hates this thing. I mean, she just despises it. And like I'm even trying my buddy Nick cousin my buddy Nick K. He's a Marine Raider and he works with this
Yeah.
company called Johnny Slicks, and they have this stuff to make it a little softer. And so I'm hoping that maybe making it a little softer will make me a little bit more attracted to my wife, man. And I'm trying. I'm telling her I'm like, baby, it's soft, but it's these are the struggles. These are the struggles of an actor, my friend.
Oh yeah, man. I hear you. And you talk about Nick Kumalatos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was with Nick. This was in January of 2022. I took my son to the Squire, which was the rite of passage, and he was there with I think his nephew. And so he and I connected, and I love that dude. We've connected actually ever since, and I've seen you guys in photos together, but he's a great dude.
He's awesome, man. Yeah. So my brother-in-law and him work together, and they're enormously close. And then, he came on to do my podcast, and then, it's been really cool. I've always had this like kind of core, just incredible group of vets that work with me on various projects. Mainly this guy Kevin Vance, a Navy SEAL who's just kind of like I mean he's just taught me so much, and I look up to him and admire him so much, and he's been this great figure for my kids as well, and his daughter and his wife Tracy. But with Punisher especially, Nick's just been super helpful, and really learning about the Marine Raider creed, and sort of what that's all about, and also really like just the bravery and courage that he's had both publicly and in his private life, just sort of like taking the journey he took and where he was at when he got out, and where he is now, and now he's just sort of like passing it on through service, both in putting his stuff out there, and then in the various programs he runs. And I love him, man. It's been such a cool friendship and learning experience for me.
Yeah, Nick is a good dude. It's interesting you say that about him, about the Marine, and seeing you in the Punisher and all that good stuff. Which, by the way, the last time we were together, I yeah, I don't think it was officially announced yet that you were going to be the Punisher in this new Daredevil movie, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So congratulations. That's
Oh, thanks,
awesome.
man. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so cool. I wish I could have talked about that with you and Ethan, man. Like it was. It's weird. I don't. I don't know about you with like career stuff. I don't. I look at those things, and it's such a. I mean, not. I look at it as such sort of like an enormous kind of like responsibility, and such a it just really humbles me. It makes me it fills me, if I'm honest, those kinds of things kind of fill me with dread. I hate barking about something before I get a chance to bite. And so I just really want to get it right. I know it matters so much to so many people, especially folks in the military community and the law enforcement community, the comic book fans. And so, it's like, it's weird. It's like like, I don't feel, yeah, I got, now it's just like, man, it's really time to get to work. And the only way that I really know how to do that is with guys like Nick.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool, man. You mentioned guys in the community that you really need to portray that character, right? And that persona, and just everything that goes along with that. You want to hear something kind of funny? I think you'll like this. So,
Man.
Ethan, you met him when you and I were together. He's my oldest of four boys, and then so him and Mason, his 15-year-old younger brother, we decided to do driving lessons for those guys. And
Okay.
so we hired actually a company that takes them through like very tactical driving, you know, like all the things that you want them to experience before like a real life thing happens. And so what we've done is we bought them 10 sessions, and they're with a law enforcement. They're with a cop, and this same cop has been with both of them for weeks now. And like everything from like, hey, you know, here's how you evade, right? If a car is coming at you, like, and also like the first time they feel anti-lock brakes, like took them on a back road and they're like, all right, man, I want you to gun it. I want you to get up to 100 miles an hour and then slam on the brakes because I want you to feel what anti-lock brakes feel like. So anyway, the cop always gives us the download, you know, it's been the same guy for weeks. And so he's always asking me about the podcast. He's like, hey, man, you got anybody coming on the show? And I was like, yeah, man. I was like, Bernthal's coming on the show. He's like, Jon Bernthal? I was like, yeah. He's like, dude, he's like, I love that guy. He's like, you know what? It's so funny, man. He's like, I loved him in The Punisher. He's like, because me being in law enforcement, he actually plays that part so well that me and some of the other guys have actually, we've talked about The Punisher, and we're like, that's a dude that like we could actually see, even though he's an actor, we could actually, he plays it so well that he could actually, we could actually see ourselves talking about these dumbasses and these criminals and stuff like that, and how we're going to take them out. Like he just seems like that kind of guy.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, I
That's
thought that
cool.
was
I
kind of cool.
appreciate you passing along. And what a cool thing you're doing. First of all, give him my best and my appreciation and my gratitude, and that means the world. But what a cool thing you're doing with the kids, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, we figured, you know, like we might as well give them some real world training, you know,
Absolutely.
with all the crazy people like text messaging and doing all this other stuff. And now that even the fact that, you know, like weed is like legal now. It used to be you only had to worry about alcohol, but now you have to worry about that.
That's
So it's
right.
like, man, you got to be like these kids, man. They got to be like, they got to be good defensive drivers. They got to have their eyes on the back of their head. So yeah, we did
Right.
that.
Yeah, that's great, man. And I think there's so much. I think there's so much of that. I think we live in an age right now, where there's so much. Look, we're consumed and we're enveloped by danger and possibility of danger and things that could go wrong. I think that's part and parcel and goes hand in hand with being a parent. It's like always right there on your shoulder. It's like, how do I, first and foremost, like how do I keep my people safe? Like that's right there. But I think also, with all of the uh, I think it's very easy for both a parent, for any of us, to sort of get like consumed by that fear.
Yeah.
And the answer sometimes, I think, for so many is just sort of like just be all on defense at all times, and just like don't go out there in the world, don't explore, don't do it. That could be dangerous. And yeah, I really like take issue with that, and it's really why I have so much sort of respect for this decision you made. I think the other way to attack any of these things is preparation, and like teaching your kids and being there with them and take them through it. And it's, we talked a lot about, martial arts and understanding that. I train pretty regularly at a place called Terran Tactical out here in Simi Valley, and I started taking my son Henry, and he's awesome, and he loves it, and they love him, and he's like found this whole community there. And I think like without like falling into some sort of like crazy political debate and some sort of like, well, where do we fall on these different issues? It's like, what about just preparation? What about just like knowing things, understanding what firearms are, understanding how to keep them safe, understanding how to use them safely, understanding that in an automobile, like, yeah, there is like you take a drive down the 405 in Los Angeles, and every other car you see somebody smoking a joint or smoke. And I don't want to get into the politics of that, like whatever that is, that is. But like, yeah, like that is a danger for our kids. So yeah, like what you're doing is awesome, and that is going to be yet another thing I steal from the Larry School of Fatherhood, man. I'm all in. I love it. I love it.
Oh man, I'll send Officer Fenner out to California for you. But
That's what's up. I love it.
well, man, it's cool to be able to jam with you again. Obviously, you know, this is the thing that we love talking about on this show, man, is fatherhood, being, you know, being a husband, being a man. And I know the first time you and I met, we spent a few hours together on the real ones, and I really got to know you a little bit. And I know for you, the thing where I always like to start out with our guests, man, is how you grew up. And I know for you, you openly admitted you're like, man, I think I was kind of a handful, you know, growing up. And but I would really love to just for you to share what your childhood was like, and even what it was like with your parents and even your dad growing up.
Sure. It's interesting, Larry. My dad, he just was in this very room. I'm in the back of my house in Ojai. My father was just sitting back here, and I told him, hey, Pop, I got to use the room for a second, and he's actually out here right now.
That's
Um,
cool.
because the reason why he's out here is, without giving too much information, there is a very um, young kid who got mixed up sort of in the wrong crowd here in our little town. And when he was 14 years old, he actually he got in a fight with another young man who was a bit older, and he ended up taking his life. And at 14 years old, he got sentenced to 36 years to life. And he's been in prison. We're very close with the family. They had very little means at the time. And again, I don't want to say too much because the trial is literally going on right now. But he's been in prison, for more years than he's lived outside of prison now.
Wow.
Now he's a 30-year-old man. And my father is out here because my dad used to be a lawyer way back in the day, and then he left to run the Humane Society. But I told my dad about this story, and he arranged this whole legal group, got relicensed, and came out here and is trying to get this young man out of prison. And so, man, I tell you that story because my dad is in his late 70s. He still plays pickup basketball 3 times a week. He's got a ton of energy. Um, I cannot imagine I cannot imagine a worse kid than myself growing up. Like I just can't. I was so wild and bucked at all kinds of authority. I grew up sort of on the outskirts of a very wild and dangerous city. But I always wanted to be with sort of the most wild and the most reckless. I think it's a big thing that people now sort of see in my work. I really flocked to that. I was interested in it. I was interested in getting to know and getting to really sort of like understand danger, probably because I was so afraid myself. Um, but my father, like through thick and thin, through all of just bumping into walls, which I now understand is such a key part. Failure is goes hand in hand with parenthood and fatherhood. But like my dad was just he never let me off. He never told me it was okay, but he always had my back. He always stood by my side, and he always believed in me, and he was always there. And I don't know that a lot of people would have been. And I just he was a great dad. He was the dad that coached all the kids. He was the dad that no matter how much trouble you were in, you could always go to him. And all kids. I mean, I remember taking real pride in that. Friends of mine, kids that were winding up in real trouble or having real hard times, they would have these private relationships with my dad. They could
Wow.
go and talk to him about anything. There was always an open door. And still to this day, and he's enormously close with the guys that I grew up in. My parents took in over 20 foster kids through their life. So kids were always like kind of coming in, and there was always this thing that I'm so grateful for, and I think really shapes my life and something I'm really trying to impart on my own children. Is there was just this real belief that there's that of God, and there's that of something pure and beautiful in everyone. And no matter where you grow up, no matter what you believe, no matter what you think, there's never a place that's too far that you can't come back from. And yeah, I'm really grateful for that. I have real shame and real regret for some of the decisions I made as a young man. Um, I also know that those huge failures and those huge shortcomings and those unbelievable blunders made me kind of who I am today. And look, I think it's something you and I talked about. When we were together, I feel for me so much of my role as a parent is trying to teach my kids, my boys and my girl, trying to teach them what I've learned, trying to impart what I've learned, but they just can't learn it the way that I learned it, and I need to do it in a better way and in a healthier way, and because I also I have a pretty cogent understanding of how dangerous things are and how fragile that line is once you start going down that road, and how it can go either way at any point, just by the grace of God, and by really a father and a mother, but a father who just stuck by me no matter what. That really got me through, and I was able to channel all of these uh, mistakes and wild behavior and curiosities and fears and into something that ultimately I was able to use with service, and go be an artist and funnel it into that. And now my primary job, which is to be a dad and a husband, and all of it shapes all of it. And I'm left with this just unbelievably profound sense of gratitude for who my father is and the kind of father that he was, and honestly continues to be.
That just shows, man, exactly what you're talking. Anybody who's going to open their door like that, and where you actually not only get to be your dad's son, right, and be in that environment, but also watch other quote unquote foster kids, right, come to the house like, hey, this is the place, right? No matter what's going on in your life, this is the place. It's interesting you say that, man, because like we've had, and I'm not going to share names or anything like that, or even ages, but we've had kids, come over here, and we know things are not right, at their house, like some really bad elements. And we've never really said it to them directly, but we've hinted to them like, hey, just so you know, our house is a place where you can always come to. If ever anything goes wrong in your life, this is the place. And we always say that quote a lot in this house. This is the place. Like for the boys and their friends, this is the place. If your friends are in trouble, this is the place. Like always having that safe, secure. And I think there's something really profound. And you just nailed it. Because when you not only are a part of that, but you watch it with other people that come into the house that you grew up in, that is really, really powerful, man. I'm curious. Have you I'm sure you have, but the story I'm telling myself is you probably have had to sit down with your dad at some point in your adult life, and you're like, dude, like, thank you, right? Like, I thank you, and sorry for all the craziness, but my God, dude, thank you so much. I now understand. But the story I'm telling myself is you've probably have said that a time or two.
Sure, man. Of course, and I think moreover, I mean, look, my house, like yours. I only had male siblings. There's a lot of male. We were all athletes. We're pretty wild guys, and I think there's also been like a very healthy amount of ribbing and going at each other in my house. And I think another big sentiment is my dad. When my kids are acting crazy and when they're coming around grabbing my mustache and pulling me to the side and we're going at each other, my dad is nothing makes him happier. Nothing
Yeah.
makes him happier than to see it all fall to me. And
Yeah.
but also just the joy in that, the joy
Yeah.
in that, and I think ultimately through all of it, through all of the unbelievable kind of ups and downs, there is this steady, always present baseline, just love and joy, and feeling that this is you, you are loved, and you are special, and that I'm not here to get you out of shit. I'm not here to rescue you, but when you're going through it, like, I'm going to be there with you, and then we're going to deal with it on the other end. But like, I will be with you through thick and thin. I will be with you. And yeah, and I think also for me, I think as a young man to kind of witness that, both with friends, friends of mine who are going through their own things again, really sort of having this profound admiration and respect for their own private relationships with my father, and the trust that was earned there, that I just thought was so so beautiful. But I've also seen it, yeah, with these foster kids who have been through unbelievable hardship and abuse, and had never really felt what it's like to feel safe and to feel love, and to see the transformation that kids would have over 2, 3, 4 months or a year, and to see them open up a profound lesson to me, and something that I take into all my work, and especially my work as a dad. And I really try to impart that on my kids. And again, to not, it goes back to the fear thing, to not sit there and fear somebody because they think differently than you, they look differently than you, they believe in things that you don't believe in, because they behave in ways that you don't behave. Don't be afraid of that. Understand them, open up to them. They love, they want love the same way you want love. Their parents love them just like you. It might be different. It might come out in different ways, but there's a real way. Look to connect, look to empathize, look to find common ground, but don't go in there leading. Don't go in there cowering, don't go in there being fearful. And it's really been something my wife and I have both struggled and succeeded with. It's something, for I know you guys, on the show, intentionality is spoken about all the time. And I love, in your last episode, you guys like really got into intentionality and what that actually means. It's like, yeah, man, I think having these sort of like specific goals, and then holding yourself accountable, and verbalizing it, putting it out there in action, and saying, okay, like, am I really working to achieve this very specific goal? But that kind of diverse landscape of the kinds of folks, and that we open our hearts and our homes to if you're going to say it, you got to do it. and
Yeah.
and and we've really tried to do that here.
It's pretty evident, when I look at like your Instagram, right? So like ever since I got back from California, and I was on your show, a lot of people have asked me like, what's he like in real life? I was like, and I'm not, John, I'm gonna be real with you. All right. I'm not saying this because you're here. And I'm not saying this because I'm gonna tell you what you want to hear. But I told him, I was like, man, I've done 1,010 interviews to date. And that dude was probably one of the most real dudes. Like literally, like what you see is what you get. Just real life dude. And the thing that, even when I go to your Instagram and I'm looking at like, and there's a lot of celebrities out there, man. It's just like, they're always like, it's like all these, like, the lighting has to be perfect, and this side's not my good side, and makes, right. But yours is like coaching your kids, right? Coaching your kids' teams, right? And hanging out with your family. And it's like all these super casual, like imperfect moments that are freaking amazing, man.
Thank
And
you.
that's what I think is so cool. Like not only are you, what you do for a profession, right? And you can say and do anything, you put things on the highlight reel and that, but it's very real. And you can tell that the things that you talk about are the things that you practice. So that's really what I want to get into as well, because you've had this pretty cool upbringing, right? You've got this amazing lifestyle and what you do for a living, but you're also a very real dad and a very real husband. And one of the questions I actually have for you, even though you're interviewing me, was how do you balance that all? And I would love for you talk about intentionality for anybody who's even the average dad. Man, we have got so many freaking issues with this. Like, we can't even like be away from these devices for more than like 7 seconds. Someone's pinging us, texting us, social media, whatever, and we're not even nearly, not many people know who we are for the average dad. But for you, you still find time to coach your kids. You still find time to do family things together. You mentioned when we were together that you guys hike up to this one restaurant together, usually like once a week, right? As a family, you just hike up there, you eat, you spend time together, you laugh, you still spend time, and you still take your wife out on dates. But for you, I would love for you to give us just a peek into the inside world of like, how do you manage to do this and what seems to be really freaking well, man?
Oh man, well look, I appreciate you saying that, and I think, just like, I don't know, I think another thing we talked about is, look, everything you're saying about kind of how I live and what's important to me, everything you said there is true. I do coach my kids, and the kids, and the being here and being present with my wife. And I do take my wife on dates, and we do hike up to the deer lodge and play pool and with the dogs and play, like all of that is very true. But I also think what's very true, and one of the things that I love so much about your podcast, and we talked about this, is I think anything worthwhile, anything that is vitally important, um, there's got to be just failures along the way. They are ripe with failures, and I think that the mistake, and again, what I admire so much about you is you constantly talk about your shortcomings and your failures, and you talk to anybody in the special forces community. It's that's where you learn, man. Like that's your chance to grow. And I think the problem is that too many people, especially in this world where we're all trying to put images up on screen and have this sort of manicured sort of view that we're projecting out there into the world, that we live these sort of flawless lives. There is no parenthood without failure. There is no parenthood without frustration, without, man, I got that wrong. I messed that up. And again, I think, really taking those moments and understanding that in those moments, there's opportunities for such success and connection and growth. Um, when you talk about the coaching, it's like, where my mind goes is, yeah, like I was just, for this basketball season, I've I coached tackle football, and then I went right into basketball, and I was doing a movie in Savannah, and so what that meant was shooting all week in Savannah. That's a small airport, so then you get done on a Friday as the sun's coming up. You get to Atlanta, and then you fly to LA, and then you get in a car and you drive 2 hours up to Ojai, right kind of in time for the game. You coach the game, you take all the kids out to pizza, then you have a night at home with your wife and the kids, but then you're back on a plane the next morning. And the truth is I don't say that to say, wow, and people say, wow, Jon, that's
Yeah.
so, but first of all, I'm doing that for me as much as I'm doing it for them. And that's also hand in hand with this unbelievable sense of shame and failure that I got to leave. I hate leaving. Yeah, like I work my butt off and I put my kid's name on everything that I do. So when I'm doing something, I'm really going to do it. But I think the overlying principle for me that I really just try to live with my life, and it's for work, it's for family, it's for spirituality, it's for everything, is just to be where you are while you're there, just to really be where you are. So if we're talking, man, we're talking. And it's so easy to be fragmented. It's so easy to be with your kids but not really be there, or to be in your own crap. Right? And it's not that that's not gonna happen. You just got to check yourself, I think, when it does. And by check yourself, it's not just sort of the self-flagellation of, oh man, I wasn't a good dad today, or I could have been better today. I think it's going, for me, what that means is going to my kid and being like, hey man, you know something, dude, I was on my phone when you were telling that story. What a dum dum I am. I always tell you how people miss. You're gonna people sit there and are looking for love in their life. They're going on these dumb dating apps, going like that, and the love of their life could walk right by them. And I always say that to my kids, how this is such a trap. And I say, you know what? It got daddy. It got daddy. Tell me that story again. Let's do that again. Let's just reset and do that again. And taking that kind of ownership, the hope is that then they will go forward with their lives and take that same sort of ownership, and not be afraid, not to be sitting there being like, oh man, I wasn't paying attention, or going to their teacher afterwards and saying, I kind of zoned out a little bit today. Do you mind? Can we go back in that? Or going to their baseball coach and saying, when we were bunting, I don't know that I really got that. Like, can we just go over, being courageous enough to admit, I don't really get it. I messed up. I wasn't really here. Can we redo that? So I don't know. I mean, I think that that's sort of like a long answer to a short question, but it really is that the intentionality of it. Like I told you, I pull into Ojai, the phone stays in the truck. This, when you have a schedule where you have to be gone as much as I'm gone, nothing. And again, this goes right to my friends in the military community, or my folks who are fighting forest fires, who are away for weeks at a time. It's like there's an understanding that this time is sacred. You talk about it all the time. It's like there's not that many years. And again, I don't think that should fill you with fear and dread and, oh my gosh, I got to make sure, I'm not losing this. But it can say, treat this time, understand how sacred it is. Treat this time as precious. When one of my pit bulls crying at the door, dude,
Probably the
something
same pit bull that
about
was
me.
with us in Cali.
Yeah, good boy. Anyway,
Was that the same one that was with us when we were recording?
man, was it this one? Come here,
It
buddy.
was the gray one. Dude, that dog was so cool, man.
Yeah. Can you see him?
That
Yeah,
one. Yes.
yeah,
Dude,
that's
that
fun.
dog is awesome.
Yeah, he's something. He's something.
I really want to highlight something you said there, man, which is well, there's a couple things. Actually there's like three things. There's intention, there's ownership, and so intention, ownership, and discipline to actually be intentional, like without devices and that kind of thing. But I want to share especially the ownership aspect of it. I think I don't know how it doesn't sound like you were raised how I was. My childhood was a bit crazy, but the messages always was I'm right, you're wrong, I'm the parent, you're the kid, no matter what, shut your mouth, right? There was never like this ownership or I'm sorry or I was wrong, right? So I did this early on and I didn't realize I was doing it. But I think a lot of parents out there, and it's not because we're bad parents. It's because we are trying to save face, right? We're trying to earn credibility with our kids, and we think that this is the way to do it. Is like, man, if I admit to my kid that I'm wrong, holy crap, then I'm found out. I have no credibility, and the kid's never going to trust me, right? So I can't apologize, right? I have to stand my ground, right or wrong. I have to stand my ground. And I think that there's a big miss with that because I think what actually happens is the thing that you fear the most, the credibility thing and the trust thing, it actually diminishes because as soon as you're real with your kids and you can apologize and you can be a human being and you can display exactly what we talked about, which is ownership. Well, one of the best lessons in life are caught, not taught. So like if you're displaying ownership, you're actually teaching it and you're not even doing it directly. I had a I had an outburst, acted like a complete and total child with my 15-year-old. This was about 6 months ago. He's one of those kids where, he leaves his water bottles and his trash and his popcorn bowls and like all this stuff. Like and it drives me freaking mad, man. Like it drives me crazy because the filter I run that through is you're being disrespectful. You don't care about our environment and it's lazy, right? That's how I view it. And what's really happening is he's a 15-year-old kid and it's not on his radar. So I went downstairs, man, kind of the same, same as you with you apologize about the phone thing. Like, hey, I wasn't listening. I went downstairs. I'm like, dude, what is it going to take for you to understand? Like, you got to pick up after yourself. Like, I don't understand what it's going to take. Like, what am I going to have to take away? I went on and I was yelling and he just stood there and he just took it all. And he goes, I'm sorry. You're right. And you don't have to yell at me. And then what did I do? Freaking puffed up my ego. And I'm like, well, if you picked up your crap, I wouldn't have to yell. Right. And then even as I said it, I was like, God, you're being a dumbass.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
like I walked away, like huff and puffing. I'm like, yeah, I'm the dad. He was wrong. Blah. And then I was like, I just taught my kid how to act more like a kid. And I went right back downstairs and I'm like, that was the exact, you should never act like that.
Mm,
Okay. I was like, I acted like a child. And in that moment, you became the 40-year-old in our relationship and I became the child. I was like, because the whole time he was like, yeah, and I'm sorry. And you don't have to yell at me. Like, I will try harder, this, that. And I told him, I was like, I'm really sorry. You know what? I don't have to yell at you. And I was like, you're like this, you're a young man at this point. I was like, so here's what I'll do. In the future, first of all, I'm sorry about that. But we do know you were wrong, correct? And he's like, yes, I know I'm wrong. Okay. I was like, okay, so in the future, I will be polite about asking if I see it. That's my job. I was like, your job is to do it right away, right? Not come do it later or whatever else. Can that be our agreement? He's like, yes, we shook on it. Ever since then, man, it's been great. But it was like this really cool lesson of like that humility. And I'll finish this with this is that I've been very pleasantly surprised with my boys. And I didn't do this or raise them with the intent of like, well, if I display it, maybe they'll learn it. I just
mm,
did it because I was an idiot. And I was like, I should probably apologize for being an idiot most of the time, which happens a lot. And what I've realized is that when things go wrong, it's fascinating to me because my kids are like, yeah, I don't have an excuse.
Mm,
I did it. Like,
yeah,
there it is. It wasn't his fault or her fault, or I ran out of time. It
yeah,
was on me. And I
yeah.
think that's
Agreed.
cool, so, and you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, look, and I mean that's a great. I mean, there's a bunch of things in there that you said, and one thing I think is really important to say as well is that the urge to come down and yell at your kid, and the instinct and whatever drives us to do those things, which we all do, that's it, that's out of the exact same love that it takes to come down and apologize. So I think that like this idea of like good dad, bad dad, it's like I am convinced that like we all love our kids, and that love can be the source of negative parenting, and it can also be the source of positive parenting. I think I heard you guys talking about the podcast the other day. The guy in the stands who is so freaked out about their kid failing out there in the baseball field that is yelling stridently and
Yeah.
is like making a complete fool of himself, and you can see in 2 seconds you either never had never played sports or don't understand the way it works, or you're just putting on this load of like toxic pressure on your kid. Like at the same time, you love the heck out of them. You just want desperately for them to have a good experience, and that's love. So I think like judging it isn't always the best way, but man, my kids are younger, and I feel that there are still a lot of things where it's like, look, man, like we've had this conversation over and
Oh
over
yeah.
and over again. Like, let's try this different way. I think that's also part of our job. I mean, part of our
Totally.
job sometimes is just that, because I think there's this whole attitude with parenting, and you see it. You see the households where the kids just it's kind of like it's always a conversation. It's all everyone's on equal footing, and I think that doesn't make sense, and that's not fair either. And I think in the same way that you have to be humble enough and aware enough and wise enough to know, hey, I let my emotions take control of me just then. Like I just acted, on a weak impulse. Like I didn't think before I spoke. I just like let it blurt out. I think at the same place, you have to stay just as strong when they're doing that and say, hey, look, man, like you're acting like your emotions are running the show right now. And you're like giving me excuses, and you got to hold your kids accountable. And again, that's also coming from, a man who as a kid refused to learn lessons, and tried every which way to sort of dodge it and keep bucking it and bucking it and bucking it. And the thing I remember as a kid, uh, when things got really bad, and things did get really bad with me, real trouble at school, real trouble with the law. The thing that ultimately got me more than anything else is when I really felt how much I disappointed my dad. Like when I really felt, like there was a betrayal. There was like, man, I believe in you. I know you're good. I know you got a good heart, but man, what you did here, like, it's just to sense that disappointment. It's like, man, that was what killed me, and made me feel, and it made me feel so much shame, and made me want to never repeat it again. And so I don't know. I don't know. I think that, like, you also don't want to use that as a tool. I think it's this delicate balance of being there with the failures, standing by their side and saying, hey, look, this is my opinion on it. I'm right
Yeah.
here. If we go this far, like I just can't let you. Like I gotta stop that, especially in the house if you're being disrespectful to somebody else in the household.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
So, we deal with it. We help a lot of men in our community. And I actually have a guy who lives in my neighborhood that we meet for coffee, once every couple of weeks, and he's having a hell of a time with his son right now and all kinds of stuff. And here's the interesting thing, and I would really love your opinion on this, because I think the way you were raised and the relationship you have with your dad, and maybe just to somehow explain it, I think would be really helpful. In an imperfect, unpolished way,
Sure.
is that in order for anybody as a son, right, or a daughter, doesn't matter, but a son, let's just take a son. In order for me to feel like, damn, that really sucks. I really disappointed him, and holy shit, I really didn't want to disappoint him, and that is heavy, heavy on my heart. And the story that I'm telling myself is, in order to feel that, you have to have a deep level of respect and love for your father. And I think there's two types of kids that get into trouble and the kids that act out. And I think there's the one type of kid who doesn't care. Like, you're my dad, whatever, dude. I could give two shits if you're my dad. I could give two shits if I disappoint you, whatever. And then there's the son like yourself and other men out there and other boys out there that are just like, holy crap, man, like that's a pain I don't want to have, is knowing that I disappointed my father. And I think the way that you actually turn that key is to respect and have a deep connection with your father, right? But the code that's so hard to crack is that if I'm a dad and I'm trying to gain respect from my son, I think a lot of guys go about it quite the wrong way. But I'm curious to know, like, what were there things other than what you've already talked about that really garnered your respect and love for your dad at a deep level, to where, like, when things did go wrong, you're like, dude, that sucks, man. I do not want to disappoint you. Like I care, man. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, look, I think that's I think that's kind of like what we're all sort of, looking for. A part of me, I gotta say, takes a little. I gotta say, the kid who says, "Man, I don't respect my dad. I don't respect it." Been around so many people like that who like
Yeah.
say those kinds of things, and I remember I may have told you this, but the first time, it's so embarrassing, but the first time I ever got locked in a cell. Did I tell you this story?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, so the first time I ever got in like trouble with the law, they took me down to the Montgomery County Jail. And for some reason, Larry, I've always been horribly afraid of crickets. I hate crickets. Like, I'm not
Yeah, you
afraid of
definitely didn't tell me
anything.
this.
I'm not afraid. I did tell you this.
No, you did not.
Okay, so I'm horrified of crickets, and I'm like 17 years old. They throw me in this cell by myself. There's no bars. There's just a door with a little window and two bunks. And you know the door, I'm in there for about 6 7 hours, and the door opens, and there's this grown man who just stole a car. And he's got he's covered in tattoos, and he's like the scariest looking guy I ever seen. I'm a kid. And I'm like, you're gonna leave this guy in here with me? I'm like, is this really happening? But before he came in, I saw that there was two crickets in my cell with me. So I'm sitting there, this big bad kid,
Yeah.
in jail, for fighting. And I'm in the corner of my bunk just staring at these crickets, and I can't get away from them. And the door opens, and this guy, and I remember thinking, I mean, I didn't say it, but I want to say, I'm a kid. You can't leave him in here with me. There's no. The guy walks in and he takes a look at me. I immediately get up to sort of offer him which bunks, staying as far away from the crickets as I possibly could. And he walks over and he just smashed the crickets, right? First thing he did. And then he sat down, and he and I ended up talking all night. And I said to him, man, the thing that I'm most upset about, the thing that I hate the most, is that I know I disappointed my dad. And I guarantee you
Wow.
right now, outside this jail, my dad is sitting there in his car. He's not going to leave till I get out. Like, he's going to be right here the whole time. And I can't believe that I did this. And he told me that he had been in and out of institutions and in and out of incarceration since he was 12 years old. And he said I was the first guy that he ever talked to that talked about a relationship with his father. And it just, it like rocked my world, right?
Holy crap, dude.
I would tell you though, man, a big part of me believes that that kid that says, "Man, I don't care what my dad thinks. I believe that that's a big old cover, man. I think every kid does, and I think that there's always, and I think it's so important for the dads that come and listen here, or the people that we talk to, like your friend who's struggling with his kid. Like, I don't believe it's ever too late. I do know that there's a window where we can really get to these guys, and we can really try to instill kindness and empathy, and an ability to self-motivate and to take responsibility and to get control of their bodies and their minds, and be curious and to foster those things. I do believe that, but I also believe that it's never too late. And I also believe that the people that say, I don't give a crap about that, that's a big old cover and a big old lie. And I think, yeah, I think, one of the ways that I know my dad fostered it with me, and I hope I'm fostering it with my kids, is being there, being there, being humble, admitting my faults, taking responsibility for my failures, but giving my point of view, but not saying it's the only point of view, and try to give them other people's point of views. I think another thing that I really try to do, and that I know that my old man did, is that, not saying I was an expert on everything. There's certain things like I'm real good at. There's a lot of things I had no idea about. So let me put you with another person that I think is a competent, responsible man that you should look up to and admire, and go learn from him. And you know what? Maybe I'll go learn with you. That's a huge way. But I think ultimately for me, it really comes down to, with my father and my self sort of like disgust, and ultimately when I start to really turn my life around, because I did a full 180 and never turned back and never will. Like, that chapter of my life I just put behind me in such a total and absolute way. uh it really came down to the fact that I had a mother and a father and brothers, but first and foremost, a father that was always there. That, like, no matter how disappointed, no matter how much it must have been embarrassing, no matter how, I can only imagine now, like, seeing your kid behave like that, or being labeled as that kid. He was always there. I'm not going to give up on you. I am not going to give up on you. And I think, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what, like, sort of a greater example of love would be. And that doesn't mean that you facilitate negative behavior, or facilitate or allow things to just, I love you no matter what. I love you no matter. My dad was hard on me. My dad did not mince words. Like, he let me know when I was screwing up. There's no question. It was very honest. But I think also always having this, like, clear chain of communication, that when I really messed up, I would tell him. I would tell him, because I knew I was going to have to deal with him eventually, but I knew first it was going to be he and I dealing with the situation together, and then we would have to deal with it, he and I. And I wouldn't trade that feeling for the world, and I never want my kids, 1 second of their life, whether I'm alive or dead, to not think that, hey, dad is right here. He's watching out for you. He's got your back. He'll stand by your side, in front of you, behind you. Any way you want me, I'm going to be there.
What's so cool about that is that, well, several things, but few in particular, is that your dad never gave up, right? Your dad was constantly there. He walked through the fire with you, right?
That's right.
And he knew there might be hell to pay from time to time, right? Whatever disciplinary action he had or did. But at the end of the day, he would walk through fire with you. I've helped men in the past, and even currently, and a lot of guys will be like, I don't know what else to do. I think I'm just done. And I've always told these guys, and maybe this is where it really hits me through your story, is that the son will never forget how many times the dad never left his side. He'll never forget how many times he walked through fire with him. And he sure as hell will remember the day the dad gave up on him.
That's right.
Like, that one will ring through history forever, my friend. So,
Dude,
like, don't ever do that.
and a truer thing's ever been said, man. That
Yeah.
that is so true, man. And I think that's, for honestly, for all people. But I think that there is an oath, man. Like, and it's something to take pride in. To know that's what faith is. And, like, that's what it is, to say, I will never leave your side. I will never not protect you. I will never not be here with you. And that's empowering. That's something to take pride in. It's something sacred. And at times that can be ugly, and at times that certainly has got to be hard. But and again, I think that a lot of folks, sort of in our community, kind of look at me. I think with the whole idea of this, like, celebrity thing, and I'm always saying I'm a dad first, and again, I really just want to keep pushing up against that image of that anybody's got this whole thing licked. You're never gonna have it licked. You're never gonna be perfect at this. That's what makes it awesome. That's what makes it incredible. That's what makes it something you constantly work for. You can wake up every morning, be thankful that you get to do this thing that's going to bring you so much joy and so much heartache and so much fear and so much just utter sublime celebration. And yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. Yeah, it's everything.
Yeah, man, it's been pretty damn awesome to see your journey, and the things that I see obviously in Hollywood, but then I see on Instagram that are more real world, and then obviously getting to know you, what little bit we have. And it's been awesome, and I'd like to just segue to one last question if you're cool with it.
Yeah, man.
And that is, you seem to have such a deep love for Aaron.
Mm.
Like, just marriage just seems to be incredibly important to you. And I would just love for you to just maybe share some wisdom and advice for guys out there. Yeah. How long you guys been married now?
We've been married for 12 years, but we've been together for, whoa, man, 22.
Tw- 22 years. Yeah. Okay. So me and Jess have been together for 26, and then we'll
Wow.
be married 20 this year. But, going back to, and I'll put you in a position to answer this maybe a different way.
Sure.
I want you to think back 22 years ago. Okay. To Johnny 22 years ago. Right. And if you had the opportunity to sit with Jon Bernthal 22 years ago and Jon Bernthal right now, like literally you took yourself out to dinner and you're like, hey man, I'm going to sit with you for about 30 minutes, and I'm going to share with you some advice that is really going to help you over the next 22 years when it comes to your relationship and marriage and this whole thing. And what would you be telling yourself?
Oh man. For, First and foremost, you know, everything in this world is what you put into it is what you kind of get out of it. Everything, and it all, work is joy. Putting in effort is joy, and taking ownership. Always doing your part. Go to yourself first. Go to yourself first. Don't be a victim. Don't blame the world. Being, to me, I really think being a man, being a human being, is about owning your crap, man. Just like own it, and understand that. Look, one thing I know we talked about was sort of the four stages of behavior, and it's something that I learned in Russia studying acting, that I just believe in so much, and I believe ultimately it's not such a good sort of way to look at behavior in terms of like how to fix behavior, or how to make your life better, or how to in some sort of self-help way. I also think it's just such a hopeful it's such a hopeful idea, because I think this idea that we have to understand that we are going through our lives, all of us right now at this moment, our marriages, our relationships with our kids, our careers, our own personal health, our eating habits, our nutrition. We run through this world, and all of us are doing all of these things that are harmful to us, that are not good for us, and we have no idea about it. So we live in this sort of like perpetual state of unconscious incompetence. We don't even know it, but we're missing the ball in some way. And a lot of it is because in 5 years from now, someone's going to discover that, if you eat, it won't be this, but if you eat yellow M&Ms 2 a day, before the sun comes up, your eyesight will improve by 30. There's all this stuff that we don't even
Yeah.
know about, right?
Yeah.
And we're screwing up. We're screwing up, and that's life. But to be constantly looking for and being open to the next state, which is conscious incompetence, being like, whoa, I am doing this wrong. When I do this, when I do this, this is not, I'm not sitting the right way. When I sit like this, I change. When I get this much sleep, I change. When I have those conversations, when I don't let a day go by, when I don't take a walk with my wife, and if there wasn't time to take the walk, I send her flowers, or if there wasn't time to send her flowers, just something, like when I wasn't doing this, and you get into that state of, wow, I'm doing this wrong, conscious incompetence. And then you get to that state of conscious competence where, when you think about it, you can do the right thing. I buy the flowers, I take the walk, I make sure I get time alone with each kid. I make sure that I have the conversation before my kids go to bed and ask them what made them laugh, what are they proud of, things that I've learned from your podcast, these things that we pick up. When I think about it, I can do it. And then ultimately where you hope to arrive, and you do arrive over and over again, is this state of unconscious competence. We don't even have to think about it. You just do it right. And it's only motivated by it brings you joy, and it's what you want to do. And you can replace these unbelievably negative habits. You can replace them. You're not lost. Everybody feels when you strip something out, you got this big hole in the middle of you, and you don't know what to do with it. I was that guy, Larry. I was that guy. I was the guy that would outdrink anyone. I would fight anyone. I wanted to be the craziest. I wanted to be everyone's sense of attention. And I was, when you strip that away, when I take that away, when I take habit by habit away, who am I going to be? Like, what am I going to be? But the answer is you can start filling it with these wonderful things. And there's nothing more wonderful to fill it with than a relationship, with your partner, man, with the woman, the love of your life, and then build a family with her and grow with her and change and watch her change and grow together, grow apart, come back together. Hey, be easy, man. Look, there's nothing even out there, man. He thinks maybe there's a coyote. That's his like favorite thing is to get a coyote. It's not gonna happen. It's like the middle of the day, But anyway, so I think that's what I would. I think that's what I would tell myself, and to and to it's odd, man, because again, it goes back to that failure thing. I needed those. Like I really needed them, man. And that guy that I was, like, that guy was undeserving of her, but she stayed with me. She weathered the storm. And I am surrounded in gratitude for that, man. I'm surrounded. And I know it's like, this, whole mission that you're on and the service that you provide and this just totally authentic and honest desire to help others that you have, I know is rooted in yourself and wanting to, if you say, do it, you put it out, you help others, it'll help you, and to live with that sort of intention, and it's a beautiful way to live, man. And I know it's rooted at a time in your life when you felt like you weren't doing it, and I think, like, always. So I don't want to say that I would admonish that 22-year-old wild kid and say, hey, man, stop being you. But I
Right.
would want to say there's a better way, man. And you can take all that stuff and you can make it work for you, not just work against you. And when you're ready, it's going to be there. You know what I mean? But you got to do the work and you got to do it.
Damn, dude. I love that answer. Not what I expected, and it was, God bless, brother. It just that blew my expectations
Cool.
on all that, because you went well beyond just marriage, right? That was more about life, and not necessarily shaming the person that we once were in life, but also just learning and evolving from it. As we wrap up here, I know there's some exciting news for you on the horizon. I know it's already public, but for any of the listeners that don't know, you've got a brand new project that you landed. So I would love for you to just share what that is.
Are you talking about Punisher?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, like, it's Marvel, so there's not too much I can say,
got it.
it's really like what I said before, man. You know, without being a husband and a father, there's no way I could even begin to sort of play that role.
Yeah,
A long time ago, I decided, it's such an unbelievable gift, man, to do what you love for a living, and I know you know that. When I was a kid, I used to read these in the doctor's office. They had a Babe Ruth cartoon book that I used to read. And I remember there was this image of Babe Ruth leaning on the side of Yankee Stadium, and he was throwing a hot dog in his mouth. And he told this kid, he's like, you know what, kid, the secret of life? Getting paid to do what you love. I love playing baseball. I love eating hot dogs. And I remember being like, wow, there's some real wisdom to that. I love doing this, man. Again, like Fatherhood, it's something I'm going to fail at over and over and over again. I'm horrified every time I start it. I'm so nervous. I always, there's always the threat of failure. There's always a mountain ahead to climb. It's always forward moving. It's always I'm chasing something. I'm never trying to arrive anywhere. So I'm always on the journey, which is I think is such a great natural state, and what makes me happy. I decided a long time ago the criteria for me in work is like I've got to be afraid of it. I've got to be if I'm not afraid of the role, then I don't belong doing it. I never wanted, oh, I could knock that out of the park. I got that. And for me, it all comes down to being a father and a husband with Frank Castle. Until you literally understand with every fiber of your body, like I know you do, that to truly love others more than you love yourself, and to willingly and gladly give your life for somebody else, only then could you possibly understand what it would be like if somebody took that from you. And
Yeah.
that is a real scary dark road to start going down. And it's my job again, not, I know at the end of the day I put on makeup and say lines for a living, but my job is to, in as dangerous and as real ways, to create that, for myself, and what that means. And it does, it takes an enormous toll. I get to do it under the umbrella of safety, and that's a gift. But there's a responsibility to folks who've really been through it, to folks that have really served, um, to live that as sort of realistically as I possibly can, and it scares the living daylights out of me. So you know, I, it's something I hold sacred, and it's a responsibility I really I hope I can live up to.
Yeah, man, you do it really well. And I'm not just saying that because you're on this podcast, but I do have a confession for you that you might find quite humorous.
Yeah.
But it's being the fact that I've gotten to interview, actors and that kind of thing. I watch film very differently. I zoom out from it and I'm like, and I really try to appreciate the craft, right? Not just the story in the movie and that kind of thing, but the craft, the character that has to emerge in the person in order to do that. So when I first was telling people that I was going to California to be on the real ones, they're like, "Hey man, you see The Walking Dead?" I was like, "Yeah, I've seen The Walking Dead." And I was like, "I've seen Wolf of Wall Street and I saw King Richard." And that's a lot of what I knew of you, right? Like some of those diverse roles. I never saw The Punisher. I'm actually and not because I didn't want to, it's just four boys and
Yeah.
constant busyness, right? But after I came back from California, I was like, I'm gonna watch this series. I'm literally on the second to last episode now. And I have to tell you, John, holy shit, dude. And I am not just saying this, but I remember seeing you in California. I was like, dude, that part you played in King Richard versus, The Walking Dead. I was like, those are two polar opposite characters. And like, holy shit, like I can't even believe then I saw The Punisher. And I was like, holy crap. Like to be able to play that part, like that is a whole nother level because now that I know you and I've gotten to know you a little bit, watching you play that role and that character that emerges, and I know the work that has to be put in to be able to play a character like that. It really, really showed. I am not surprised whatsoever that you got this next gig and the next evolution of what that character is. Not surprised at all because my friend, I'm not telling you this because you're in front of my face.
Thanks.
You are freaking awesome at that. And not only being an actor, but that role, holy shit, man. Really
Thank you.
good.
But Larry, I think it's important, and I think maybe beneficial for your audience. I think there's something to it, and I hear it discussed on the show a lot about sort of like masculinity and gender roles and stuff like that. And man, I think when you talk about sort of this like some agent will tell you, if you got range, if you can do different things, you got to show it and all this stuff. And I've never been sort of strategic in my career that way. But one thing I do fundamentally believe is that, like, whether it's Lee Iacocca or Rick Macy from King Richard or Frank Castle or Shane from The Walking Dead or the guy in Wolf of Wall Street, I think that I think we get really confused with masculinity, and I think that so much of it, um, these not roles that you play as an actor, but these gender roles that we play. so many people I think are just kind of playing pretend, and you've done martial arts, for me the same martial arts and boxing, and I love those things because everything becomes true. Like all the noise goes away, and we can just find out sort of everything, and it's immediately humbling, and you immediately sort of see sort of where you're at and what you need to work on. But to me, things like integrity and empathy, standing up for what you believe in, being committed to your family or being committed to the people that are depending on you. These are things I've really been able to play in all sorts of different kinds of men from all different kinds of walks of life. And one thing that's really important to me is to understand that Lee Iacocca and from Ford Ferrari that I got to play, and his bravery and his ingenuity and his commitment to what he believes in and to his family. That's just as masculine and just as strong as Frank Castle going and mowing down the people that took his family from him. And I think it's important to sort of understand that and to kind of redefine some of that stuff, especially for young boys, because I think there's a lot of pressure for young boys to sort of just see, okay, Frank, that's a man, but this guy isn't. And I really strongly disagree. And I think so much of like the confusion amongst so many men is that they're so concerned with their own inadequacies of sort of how strong they are, how fit they are, or how capable they are with their hands, with weapons. And the problem with it, I'm not saying that those things don't have something to do with masculinity. They very much do. The problem with it is those things keep those people from going and taking jujitsu and learning how to, safely keep and use a firearm, and learning how to have situational awareness, because they're so plagued with their own inadequacies. And I just think that these differences in people should really be celebrated, and we should all sort of come and try to learn as much as we can and conquer those kinds of fears. I think it's especially important with fatherhood, and you see that with the coaching the various sports. It's just because you don't know something, your kids can still learn it, and it gives you an opportunity to learn it too. And I don't know, I don't know if that resonates or not, but I wanted to kind of put that out there.
Oh, dude, totally. In fact, in our mastermind, we now rebranded the first 3 months as the dojo, because you go in and you basically roll and you learn new skills around being a husband and father. And it's interesting you say that, because like, not being raised with a father myself, the one thing I've always told my kids, I've just been really open with them. I'm like, there's not a whole lot I can teach you as far as like swinging a hammer, fixing stuff, and that kind of thing. Like I never really learned that stuff. But here's what I'll tell you. Whatever it is you want to do and learn, what I can promise you is I'll do it with you.
It's awesome.
And so like it was last month, it was actually the week after we got back from California, my 15-year-old got his hunting license through high school. And he was like, I really want to go hunting. I was like, I've shot many firearms. I've never hunted. I was like, so if you want to do that, I was like, I'll find us a place. And we're basically, all we have to do is show up as newbies, and they take us under their wing, and then we go guided and we learn how to do this. And we did. And we spent the weekend at this ranch in Texas. And it was one of the coolest things. I mean, I think it's really important for men to hear what you just said, because it's okay if you don't know these things. And it's
Totally.
super important that you don't hide behind any persona or any beards or anything like this. Like, go get your hands dirty. Go in an environment where you're going to get your rear end handed to you, or going into an environment where you don't know what the hell you're doing. And even, take your kids along with it,
Do what
because
you can, man.
yeah,
Totally. Seeing you admit that humility, and then going with, and then learning together. Me and my 11-year-old and I, we went hunting with the exact same situation. We went hunting with my brother-in-law back in Ohio at Thanksgiving. I'd never done it before, and it was just awesome. Like he was so happy, and I was right there with you, right there with him, wide-eyed and learning, and total newbie, knew nothing about it, and how great for him to see me being humbled and looking to these other men and saying like, please teach me.
yeah,
Big bad dad, the Punisher. You never hunted, dad? It's none of that. Like, oh, dad, we're learning this together. Yeah, man. I'm like, this is pretty cool, huh? You know what I mean? And he's like, shh, dad, gotta be quiet. I'm like, yeah, you're right, buddy. You know what I mean? It's awesome.
yeah.
So like, yeah, great. Really, really, I'm glad you shared that, man. That's awesome.
Well, back at you, man. This is awesome, dude. Thank you seriously, man, for coming on the show. This has been super helpful. I know for the men, for our audience, the guys in our community, for anybody who this is dumb, but anybody who doesn't know who you are, just the best way to find you on social and maybe the best way that they can just follow your journey. What's the best way to do that?
Oh man, I guess Instagram. But I, man, I'm out there. I got this podcast called The Real Ones that Larry's on. It's that episode's coming soon. And I just really appreciate being on. This is my favorite podcast, and I have so much respect and admiration, not just for you, man, but also for your audience and for dads that are digging and trying, whether it's their first day or whether they're years into the alliance. It's awesome. It is the sort of definition of intentionality, and like, I don't know, it was a real dream of mine to come on and to meet you, and getting to meet your son. It was even cooler, and like seeing your guys' dynamic. And so yeah, man, you got a friend in me, bro, and I look forward to the next time. We got to keep it going.
Oh, back at you, man. I welcome anytime you want to come back on. This was awesome. And dude, best of luck in the future. And now that I've gotten to know you a whole lot better, and seeing all the art that you've created, all the films, and I enjoy watching you I enjoy watching you execute your craft, because it's fun to watch.
Thanks, brother. I
You
really
bet,
appreciate
man.
you saying that, man.
You bet.